It's June 15th, 2020. This is Roqe. We talk about shining the light as a global Iranian community on our musical artists in the diaspora and back in Iran. It's important to not just highlight the best from the past and the musical styles you might naturally fall back upon, but also those who are paving the way for Persian music's future. So maybe once in a while we need to take a respite from the bandari, the sonati, the talfiqi, and turn up the hip-hop? That's right, it might be the contemporary pop music of the West, but hip-hop and rap are still pretty new in their Iranian incarnations. One of the most beloved pioneers of Iranian hip-hop joins us today. This is Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. This is Roqe. Welcome to episode number 18 of Roqe. Hi, Shaya. You're speaking with your keys. It's very nice. Should I know what that is? Oh, very nice. Well, we can explain the relevance of that in a moment. We have Erfan coming up, our buddy, who is in LA. I know he's
very excited. Actually.
You are excited,
yes.
and because he's not just somebody who's doing interesting things in music right now and producing and running a record label, all that. But as we will explain, this genre didn't even really exist of Persian hip hop up until the last couple of decades, and he was one of the forerunners of that, even though he's in his mid-30s.
Exactly. Yes.
How was your weekend?
Pretty well, pretty good. Yeah, actually, the weather is great.
The weather's great.
Yeah, and
I had a day of playing. Sometimes I'm home and actually my dog Oogie, little Oogie, I have a little French bulldog. He had surgery, so I had to kind of tend to him all weekend, making sure that he's okay.
How's he? I forgot to ask you.
He's really stoned because he's taking these medications to keep him. So he's just kind of looking, staring at the wall like he's done, smoked a huge joint.
Philosophical. Yeah.
Philosophical, that's correct. Yeah. I just before I should explain when I'm giving him this medications, it's because of course he's wearing the cone of Shane around his head, but you have to give him because we don't want him to be too active because he's had knee surgery. So he's young, he's only a couple of years old, but already his knee had some issues and there was a luxating patella, so they had to fix his knee up, and so he's got to stay not active, and his tendency, even though he's got this one leg now that he can't use for now, his tendencies want to run around. So you give him these, they prescribe these pills to just keep him calm, So that's why he's stoned while he's taking these.
I love Oogie.
Yeah, he's the best. So I was home with Oogie, and then sometimes I create playlists for myself of what I'm going to play all day, and then sometimes it's one artist, and my favorite all-time, is David Bowie, right? He was a little before my time, but then I caught up to him throughout my life, and he just became my idol. So all of Saturday was 1977, 1978 era Bowie, the three albums that he put out when he was in Berlin, Low, Heroes, and Lodger. And I was actually thinking about you. I don't know if we've talked about Bowie.
No. We
so
have to talk about Bowie.
Did you? Be very careful how you answer this. Did you know of David Bowie while you were growing up and playing music in Iran?
Yes, of course. Yes, and I think
because once in a while you didn't know Talking Heads.
No, I didn't know them.
Okay, but you knew Bowie.
Yes, Bowie is kind of famous in Iran. Yeah, and I think the song was very hit in Iran. The Lost Highway.
Lost Highway.
Lost Highway. I think it's a soundtrack for the Lynch.
David Lynch.
David Lynch movie.
That's this is I'm a Bowie expert. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you sure, really? Lost Highway? Are you thinking of David Bowie?
No, it's for sure David. Maybe I'm wrong with the name,
maybe
but
there's a
it's
song
definitely David Bowie. It's the ending title. The song. Yeah.
Okay.
I will find it and
find
play
it during the Erfan interview. You can see what we're talking about. So well, that's good. So you were a Bowie fan.
Yes.
And then Sunday I was listening to a guy named Sohail Nafisi.
Oh, I love him too.
Who also I love. And the funny thing about that is I don't understand. You know, it's hard. I mean, I actually can understand all the lyrics to the 70s pop Iranian music, you know, even someone like Dariush I can understand. But with Sohail Nafisi, I love it, but I don't totally know what he's singing some of the time.
But usually he sings actually the song that I love from him. He sang one of Ahmad Shamlu's poems, and I love that. And he never sing a cheesy thing, and I love him. You
know what I love from Sohail Nafisi? When he was on the Lost Highway soundtrack. It was great. I'm not sure if that's the right one, but I think Lost Highway, yeah. He was. We need to look that up. I might be wrong. No. It might be the Lost Highway.
No, I will find it.
Okay. All right. I feel like we need to find it right now. Should I look it up?
Yeah.
Lost Highway. So we're supposed to have started the show here. 1997 film. Okay, so soundtrack.
Is it Bowie? I'm sure that.
Yes, there is a song. Wow, this is we're going deep here. There's a song by Bowie on the soundtrack.
Yes,
but there's 22 songs on the soundtrack. One of them is David Bowie. I mean, it's not the most. It's not the first reference people think of.
Yes, but
that's what you knew him from.
Yeah. It's the first song that I knew Bowie, and then I got to him, and he's
all right.
Yeah,
I stand corrected. Trent Reznor produced that Lost Highway record from Nine Inch Nails. Okay, well, we've gone a little off the topic here, but so anyway, the weekend was Bowie, Sohail Nafisi. I recommend that mix to anybody. Yeah, a little heavy on the interesting men, but there you go, and love to Oogie, who's back in his kennel right now, staring at the kennel, wondering what's going on and why he's in a daze. Let me get to our guest, who we've just talked a little bit about, but a very interesting guy. You know, while American youth of the 80s and 90s could grow up idolizing hip-hop artists like Grandmaster Flash and then Public Enemy, the Beastie Boys, or then Snoop Dogg, not a lot of kids born in Esfahan in the 1980s were dreaming of becoming superstar rappers. That's partly because prior to the last couple of decades, Persian hip-hop wasn't a thing. It was something that literally did not exist. In fact, it's such a young subgenre that one of its grizzled veteran pioneers is actually still only 36 years old. And these days, he sounds something like this.
اقله خاطرات بچگی تو دره خاطرات نشگی شدیم درگیره هرچی راه بد بگی ولی ندادیم ما باج به شاه و بردگی حرفم که میزنیم جای پردنی وقت سر بریدنم یاد جای پنبنی تو زندگی سرت میره باشی سر بزی این با موش بدونی زده داشتی سر به جیدا آره بدون تیم هارتر منه قبل عمل شما سارتر و زده هنو لمس نکردی.
A little taste of Erfan Paydar, or just Erfan, with one of his latest tracks, Paydari, a song off his album from last year called Ayatol Trap. He is a poet whose works run the gamut from daily life and fun screeds to social issues and political commentary. He's a songwriter, a producer, a podcaster, a label owner, and undoubtedly one of the best-known hip-hop artists to come out of the Iranian global community. Erfan joins me from Los Angeles today. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian. What's going on, Shaya? It's good to talk to you guys finally. I'm excited to have this conversation.
I'm really happy to have you on. I really am. Listen, first of all, I hope you've been doing okay during the COVID era. I heard you say this in a very recent interview. You said, I want to quote you. You said, there are a lot of things I've gotten used to doing during quarantine. I'm going to stick to doing those things. It was kind of a teaser because in that interview, you don't explain what those things are. So what are those things? And how has the way you lead your life changed in this pandemic time?
Well, there's a lot of things that you do that just cuts out the hours of your day. So much wasted time when you're just going to work, especially I live in Los Angeles, just getting to the office and back and just going to the grocery shopping, anything. You waste so much time that you don't realize. And then when the quarantine happened, I realized that I could organize my day so much more, and there's so much that I could do just being at home. And then you get better sleep, you go out less. So overall, you just end up, I feel like you can, in some way, my lifestyle become healthier, and I became more productive because there's a lot of different things that I do that they need their own focus. So I was able to do.
Are you a partier normally?
On weekends, yeah, some might say that. I like going out and not going out. I don't go clubbing and stuff like that, but I do like hanging out with friends, listening to good music. I like going, out of town in nature, getting cabins and that kind of thing. So, anyways,
it's interesting because so there's less 4 a.m. kebab at this point, and after a night of arak, it's interesting because Melody from Obg's a couple of weeks ago on the show was saying this time she's in New York has been eye-opening for her, that somehow the isolation led her to looking inward and thinking a lot more about how she leads her life. Have you actually experienced something that profound? I mean, it's okay if you haven't.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of things because when you live really fast-paced, and maybe it's not even just a quarantine, but when you get a break and you kind of have something breaks that habit of not even a habit, but just like going so fast-paced with everything, you don't have time to sit back and reflect on everything that you're doing, what things you need to cut out in life, what things you need to spend more time on. And it gave me, that's what it gave me, the quarantine.
So what's something you'd want to cut out now?
Getting more sleep. That's the number one thing. I wasn't getting much sleep. I don't sleep long hours. I wake up, no matter what time I sleep, my friends make fun of me. They say if he sleeps at 12 o'clock at night, he wakes up at 6, 7. If he sleeps at 3 a.m., he wakes up at 6, 7. If he sleeps at 6, 7, he wakes up at 6, 7. So,
really, you're an early riser.
Yeah. I've been always throughout my whole life. I'd wake up like 7 a.m. on weekends when I was like a kid and drive my parents crazy.
That's counterintuitive. That's at odds with the drug-addled hip-hop star image that I would expect. You'd been rolling out of bed at 1 in the afternoon, still sobering up.
Yeah.
So, we've talked to a few musicians during this period who've spoken of their fears for their careers with this pandemic and the aftermath. Of course, musicians not being alone. I mean, everybody's worried about this economically, but
sure.
Certainly classical musicians or someone like Hamed Nikpeh, who was on a few weeks ago, talk about how they don't know how they'll make ends meet without being able to depend on live show revenue in a time when there's not going to be any live shows for the foreseeable future. Is it different in hip hop because you can depend more on recordings and videos to monetize your existence, or are you also worried about where things go from here?
No, definitely. I've had some worries because I had to cancel 3 shows. They were postponed, and multiple other shows that were supposed to make happen this summer. I had a big show in LA. Like, everything's been put on hold. So I definitely lost out on a lot of money. But at the same time, because I do so many I do multiple different things that I do. So I've been able to kind of tap into something different, like do more songwriting, for example, for people, and charge people to write songs for them or do production for them. now that I can't do shows, and I fall back on that.
You know, I've told you this when you and I have talked before, but for the longest time, I thought you were like a super Irani guy who had more recently come from Iran and probably didn't even speak English. So it was quite funny to find out you're an American lad from California who's also Iranian. And in a way, you are the ultimate diaspora kid because you spent your formative years of schooling both in the United States and in Iran, kind of toggling back and forth. Tell me how that exactly worked.
Yeah, well, my dad, he was a professor in soil science, like chemistry of the soil. So since he was a student in the 60s, he always went back and forth between Iran and America. And then when he got married and he had a family, it continued. So I spent, like you said, from kindergarten, then elementary school, junior high school, and then from high school, all four in Iran and here. So I was going back and forth every two to 3 years. So total mix of both cultures and a lot of confusion that comes along with that.
Just before the confusion, what's the actual architecture of this? I mean, what does it mean? You would do like half a school year in California and then go do the second half in Iran? Or say you're in high school. What do you actually, tell me what a year would look like?
Yeah, pretty much. High school, for example, my 10th grade, I finished 10th grade and then I came here for 11th and 12th grade. And I would just have to kind of assimilate somehow, and it's difficult. It was easier coming from Iran to here, but going back to Iran was the difficult part because let's say like math, right? Math classes, I was way more advanced in math in Iran than when I came here, to the point that when I came here in the 10th grade, I was pretty much graduated from high school. I had there was nothing. I was just taking AP classes, and then outside of that, I was taking photography, theater, those kind of classes just to fill up my hours because I didn't need school. But going from here to Iran, let's say we don't have Arabic here, as you know. So let's say going back from here to Iran, and then I haven't studied Arabic for 2 years, and I have to go to class and do Arabic. It's just so difficult. It's insane, It's almost like you're a social experiment. What happens when you take a kid and put them? Because I mean, you were born in Isfahan, but then you spent the first few years of your life in the States, right? So much so that your first language was English, and so you went back to Iran as a little kid and learned Farsi. Is that correct? Yeah. I did first grade here, and then I went back to Iran, so I had to do first grade over. And I had to skip the third grade, and I did my whole third grade in the summer over there. And it's tough. It's tough sometimes, but.
Well, primary school or public school or high school, for that matter, can be pretty intimidating as it is. So then you're going back and forth, and you don't always know the language as well. You're behind in some ways, ahead in other ways. Obviously, it would have been confusing, but also intimidating. Did you ever feel like I just don't fit in either place?
Yeah, I kind of felt like that in both countries because I was a foreign kid when I went to Iran. I was a foreign kid when I came back here. So that whole identity crisis of who am I, where am I from, what's the deal with this stuff, and sometimes when you're a kid, you don't look at these things in depth. So you just kind of ride along, but it's definitely tough.
What was your way of, you say ride along? I mean, what was your way of dealing with that? One of the ways I dealt with it was to be angry at my parents. I was sort of like, hey, why did you bring me to this place where people think I'm a terrorist or whatever? I was too young to really have the consciousness around what was going on. And in fact, this would be something that I would love later in life, this dual cultural experience and all that. But as a kid, it's how did you react to that?
To me, it was just like, oh, this is what it is. Maybe this is just what life is. I didn't know that, there's another way because that's just what I was used to from my first memories on. So this is just life, and that's how it is, and that's what I have to do to get over it. And that's how I dealt with it. So
when you're 10 years old and another kid says to you, hey, Erfan, where are you from? What do you say?
Here or there? It's different.
That's so
Well, in
interesting.
Iran, in some ways, it was more simple because, like, okay, I'm Iranian. I just came back from America. I lived there, and like my friends and people around me knew that. But coming here, every time I came back, it'd be kind of difficult to explain that. Okay, no, I'm American. I went to school here. I was here, but then at the same time, you come back, and then you have an accent. You haven't really spoken English in a few years. I definitely felt more like a foreign kid here than in Iran. But at the same time, over there, I kind of felt the difference between me and the kids, and what I was used to seeing in school. School's mixed here. Over there, it's not. Schools are definitely more up to date. Like, I remember when I went back to Iran for the first grade, I went to the school. I'm like, oh, these benches in class look like shit. Like, what is this? And I'm like, Mom, where's the library? She's like, they don't have a library in this school. And just stuff like that.
Where were you in Iran when you were going back? Were you in Tehran or Esfahan, or where was it?
I was in Esfahan. My dad's from Esfahan and my mom's from Tehran. So I spent quite a lot of time in Tehran too. I was closer to my mom's family and the Tehrani side. But going to school in Esfahan because my dad, that's where he taught in the university. So we would go back there.
So this geographical duality translates inevitably into this weird cultural duality too, where on the one hand, I mean, I've read that you were a big fan of Kurt Cobain, Nirvana, he was one of your heroes. Definitely not something that would have been pumping out of the speakers in Mashhad, right? But but then you're also at the same time as a kid falling in love with Persian poetry. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the Persian poetry actually happened. One of the reasons, when I was learning Farsi when I was like 7, 8. I mean, you're a kid, you learn quick, right? So obviously, I picked up on Farsi pretty quick when I went back. But then for I believe it was my 9th birthday, I got a book of Sa'di as a gift, and I read a lot when I was a kid. I love books. One of the things that you mentioned about like coping or what did you do was just like I read a lot, all kinds, from fiction to Jules Verne's to poetry, history, like, fiction, whatever that seemed interesting to me. But then the poetry really got to me, especially Sa'di. He's an easier poet to understand compared to, let's say, like Maulana, Rumi. At 9 years old, you're not going to understand anything about Rumi, right? Mm-hmm. But Sa'di had stories, he had funny stuff, he had jokes, and he has these things called hekayat. So like there's a piece of, there's a poem, but before each poem, he had like a little hekayat, which is like a little paragraph story. He says a story and then he writes a poem about it, and that was like super cool to me. And I fell in love with the language and the usage of words and the pictures they draw in your head. So I just got really interested. I'm like, so who else is writing poetry? And then I got into the more difficult stuff and more complicated things, and got to Omar Khayyam, which became my favorite and still is my favorite.
I was going to ask you why he's your favorite.
He's my favorite because I think he writes in this style of Rubai, which is like, it's very short. It's just pretty much 2 lines. In Farsi, we say mesra. It's like 2 baits or 4 mesras, and I would just, the things about life and death that he talks about, and he basically, let me put it this way. Rumi, there's like, you read 2-3 pages of one poem, and at the end, it says something that blows your mind. You're like, whoa, like, I read all this and there was a point to it that I get now, and that's crazy. Khayyam, he says these really big things, really important things that's important to everybody. It's mostly focused on life and death and living in the now. And he does it in such a small, like, it's a small piece of writing that it blew me away. And I thought, like, wow, this guy wrote these things 800 years ago. I'm reading it now. It's exactly how I feel, and it's so relatable. Sometimes maybe Rumi or Hafez was not as relatable to everyday things in life that we go through and people think about. And that whole message of life and death and living in the now, and we're not going to be here forever, of Khayyam, changed my life. And it was one of the reasons that got me thinking about death and got me to be interested in writing and wanting to leave something in behind. Because I'm like, okay, he wrote this stuff 800 years ago, and I read it right now. And if it's like he wrote it today, I want that. I want that when I'm gone. so many people came before us, so many people are going to come after us, with no mention, nothing left of them. What's going inside me, I wanted to be here, and I want people to relate to it, and know that I was here. So
I have to say, it's again, maybe this won't seem like a surprise or something that even that interesting to a lot of Iranians or people of Iranian descent in the diaspora, but it's still interesting to me to hear people like you talk about being a kid getting into these poets, these sophisticated poets. I mean, as someone who grew up in London and Toronto, it would. I mean, it's not like we didn't have kids in certain classes who were really into reading and poetry, and there'd be the sort of one kid who'd be immersed in that stuff even from a young age. But it would be inconceivable to think that most kids are reading Rumi or Omar Khayyam at 10 years old. That's a very uniquely or interesting Persian thing. And I wonder how, when you were consuming and absorbing these poems, and then you would come back to American Erfan in California, how you would, or if you would, talk to other kids about that stuff.
Well, yeah, I guess it's still, even for an Iranian or Persian kid, it's not typical for everybody to, read poetry, and like none of my friends were into it. So I mean, I spent a lot of time playing in the street with my friends, play soccer on my bike, but then I really liked to read when I got home, and it wasn't something that, it was like, that's part of like me being alone, because I went back and forth so much. In some ways I felt like misunderstood in both countries. So it's one of those things that I kind of kept to myself, and it was my time, it was my alone time, and what I was interested to and what I was into, more so than something that me and my friends were doing or talking about.
I don't want to zip ahead too far, because I'm enjoying the journey of Erfan. But when you talk about not fitting in or wondering where you fit in, when did you or have you decided you fit in somewhere now? When was the point where that changed for you?
That I fit in? That I felt like I fit in?
Yeah.
It never happened. But I mean,
like, you're still not sure. You're still not sure if you fit in either country, you mean? Or
yeah, I mean, I fit in. Yeah, the last time I was in Iran was in 1998, May 27th. But as I started to write my own lyrics and kind of talking about my story, whether it's about the diaspora or personal feelings, and whatever I wrote about, and then I put it out there in the world. And let me take a step back. Like, there's a lot of things that I like to talk about and I'm into, but when I'm around people, I feel like, okay, that's not a subject of interest to most people maybe in the conversation. So I don't talk about those things. I kind of dumb it down and talk about things that everybody's talking about, and so that happens. But then the most honest I can be about who I am and my feelings is when I write. I just have no limits, no borders. I talk about anything and everything that I want to, right? So once I did that and I put it out there in the world and people responded to it, that's when I felt like, you feel like, okay, if people are getting my most personal feelings and they're understanding it to the point that they're becoming a fan of my music and they're kind of idolizing it, okay, then no, there's a connection here between me and people.
Well, it's amazing, because you become the product of the duality of those influences. I mean, not a lot of guys can claim to have been influenced as a kid by Tupac and Khayyam. They don't usually go together in a sentence. You must have wondered where exactly you fit in with those kinds of vastly different creative sources. When did you realize, or was it even a conscious thing, that you were becoming a fusion of those two worlds in terms of the art that you were going to create?
It happened years later. That happened years later. And now, maybe when I was a kid, I didn't like the fact of going back and forth so much, and I didn't like it. But now, like everything, every bad thing that happens in your life, every tough thing that happens in your life, at the time it's shitty, but later on you realize, like, okay, I learned a lot from that, and that changed me. That made me tougher. That made me more, sometimes I feel like I'm a chameleon. I have no fear of just going to any country, starting over right now, starting a new field, new job, nothing. Like, I don't have fear of anything, and that comes from my background. And
wait, what? What do you mean? So What? So if if right now you were told you have to go to Argentina and start over, you'd be okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Sometimes I strive for it. I want to do it, you know. Like sometimes my friends like, come on, like chill. Like I'm like, I want to go live in, you know, maybe I like Spain. You know, it's interesting. They're like, dude, shut up, just chill, relax. You're good. You don't have to like.
But you still want to be Erfan with your legacy and your albums and all that, or would you be cool if all that was taken away?
No. I mean, that's a big part of my life. I've spent the past 20 years of my life to that. So I don't want that to go away. But I mean more in the sense of a lot of people, they like stability and they like to getting in the rhythm of something and staying there. But I have no fear of, you know, losing that rhythm and starting something new. So even if I would go to Argentina, I would still continue to do my music. But I'm not afraid about the unknown of what Argentina is and its new land, because I've lived in so many different countries and cities and places. That's just like the whole world is like, you know, I would say it's the same to me, but it's just another place to live. That's how I see it.
I completely understand and relate. I want to actually see if I can deconstruct this. To go from those influences of Tupac and Khayyam to what you become as a hip hop artist and a rapper, because it's so fascinating. Persian hip hop did not really exist when you were a teenager, which, by the way, wasn't that long ago. I mean, 20 years ago, there's no such thing. You're considered one of the pioneers of the genre, along with artists like Hichkas or Zed Bazi. How is it that you could even conceive of something that had not been done? I mean, did it feel strange or somehow odd when you first started rapping in Farsi? Was there part of you that sort of thought, can I do this? Is this allowed? Is this weird? Is this going to be accepted?
Absolutely. There's a world of doubt, and, you know, there's fear of getting into something new always. And so I was writing poetry, and it was all self-reflection, right? But then I also loved music. I grew up on like rock and grunge, and then I got into rap. And Tupac was a huge influence, because listening to Tupac as a foreign kid, as an immigrant kid here, gave me strength and power. Like the way Tupac basically talked about himself and his life and like, about the hood. Like I never lived in the hood, but I listened to it and like I saw it like it was day. You know, like I saw everything that happened because of his words and the emotion that was behind the things that he was saying. There was other rappers talking about the hood, like gangster rap and this, that, but the emotion wasn't there. You know what I mean? But the emotion that Tupac had made me feel like, okay, and you could get through everything. And then I'm like, okay, I want to do that. I want to do that for other kids. And I want to do that for Iran and for Farsi speakers, because I had gone so much from Iran and the Farsi language and the Iranian poetry. So I'm like, let's mix these things up. And I just, you know, started doing it.
Do you remember the first time you did that?
I remember the first rap that I wrote. I remember, and I told one of my good friends, like Nima and my brother Adele, I told him that this is pretty cool. And I recorded it on the beat of Mobb Deep Shook Ones in my room on that beat. And the laptop that had a broken microphone, I had to like get on the ground and like scream into the laptop and just started doing it like that. And you know, I got motivation from a few really good friends. And
what happened when you listened back?
When I listen, I don't have that. I wish I had that song. I have no idea where it is. But like when I listen to my first songs right now, I mean, it really takes back. It's an emotional journey. When I listen to it, kind of like I think about the past, let's say 17 years since I started doing it seriously.
So let me get something out of the way, which is that, you know, when I first heard some Persian hip hop, I don't want to throw any artists under the bus. Some of it, not all of it, some of it sounded like, to me, like Iranian guys adopting popular hip hop beats and song riffs, American riffs and beats and even melodies, and just rapping over them, but this time in Farsi. So like, let's take 50 Cent and just rap in Farsi. It didn't feel entirely inventive in some cases. How do you react to me saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. But then when I think me and the first guys, like they came out, we were kind of writing and doing it at the same time, but some of their music came before me. And when that happened, I'm like, whoa, there's other people rapping in Farsi too. But at the same time, I wasn't as easygoing as now. And at that time, I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, they're not, it's not original. You can't just take someone else's beat, rapping with the same flow and melodies as them about the same subject. This is a translation. This is not, you know, original music. And also lyrics were very important to me and what you say, and some lyrics like sounded funny to me. I'm like, oh, that's cheap, you know. So that was my reaction, and kind of when my song came out and people responded, like, whoa, like that's what happened. I put a song out called Shostashu. When Shostashu came out, I think it was a lyrical song. It was original music by a producer that I looked for 6 months to find a producer who would work with me, that I could afford. And when I got the response from that, I'm like, okay, then I'm on the right track. I'm doing the right thing. And I'm a very momentum driven person. So motivation, like when I have a momentum, like it takes over my life, you know? So I just, you know, start happening.
Let me play some of your earlier work. This is a song that became quite big for you at the beginning of your recording career. Let's play a little taste of Khatiman.
صد مرد هفت خط داره خط یه رد بی برگشت داره لشکر از تهران تا مصرف داره برا تک تکشونم من هستم پای شستم واسه افراده تو خیابون نگاه چپ به من بکس کیم او دستم اشاره خطم میان زود هرکس که باشه بذار بیان تو میخوان زود هرکی بکنم قبل من چشه کور آهنگام پخت شد هوا ما دارم وقتی نیست نفس وقتی حوث دارم بپرم.
That's Khatiman from Erfan's debut album in 2007 as Khane Tagur. Erfan, tell me what you remember about creating that song.
Well, this song is actually a pretty interesting story. When I released that, I'm not a superstitious person by any means, but some things, the way they happen is just amazing. So I had a best friend in junior high before moving back to Iran. That's when I lived in Northern California. I lived in Sacramento, and his name was Amir. He went separate ways. I went back to Iran. He stayed here. We lost contact. You know, there was no like Facebook and internet, like, you know, social media to keep in touch with people back then. So I come back to America, Southern California. I start writing. The first song that I released, Shostashu, MySpace was hot back then. So I put that song on MySpace. So maybe a few days after my song came out, I get a message from this guy. It says like, "Are you so and so? And you went to so and such school in Sacramento?" I'm like, "What the fuck? Amir, it's you?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Bro, I produce. I have a studio in LA, and I've been producing for a few years now. Like, we should get together." I'm like, "That's amazing. My best friend from back in the day. I'm a rapper now. He's a really good producer." So we got together, and he started like playing beats for me, producing music for me, and this is one of the songs that he sent me. And I loved it right off the bat. And I was doing loans back then. I was like in the mortgage business, and at the same time I was rapping. So one day after work, like when some of my friends were still there on the office making calls, I went to someone else's office and I just, you know, started writing this beat, and then, you know, recorded it. It came out, ended up being, it's still probably to this day, this is the song that everybody knows me by. Like that was my breakout song to the mainstream and to like, you know, yeah.
How surprised were you when mortgage broker Erfan scores a hit? I mean, how surprised were you with how quickly this, albeit in a subgenre way of the you know, in terms of Iranian culture and music, it's so new and so different that it got the traction that it did?
Well, it was a very surreal feeling because obviously I wasn't going back to Iran. So I would just hear stories from people, how everybody's playing in the streets, at parties, different cities. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy. So we made a music video for it. And then the music video got really big. And, you know, and then Facebook happened. And through Facebook, at some point, I realized that like so many people, Paidar is my music name. It's the name of my music family. And so many people on Facebook had their last names as Paidar at some point. And I was just like, I don't know, what do you do when you're like a kid in his early 20s, mid 20s, and like that happens? I was amazed, and I just felt like a responsibility. And again, it kind of was like fuel in my fire, and it just, you know, expanded more.
With apologies to anybody listening who thinks this is an extremely naive question, but I wasn't in Iran in 2007. How does a song like Khatiman and the video, I'm assuming it's not legal or it's not being pumped on radio stations at that time in Iran. So how are people accessing it at that time?
Oh, there you go. That's a really good point, because it's not, our songs don't get played on the radio, on the national TV and stuff like that. So the internet really helped. and people back then, especially the whole Bluetooth thing came through, and people like sharing songs through Bluetooth, and just kind of it's like a grassroots thing. People sharing it with each other, and also satellite TV. There was satellite music channels like PMC, and they would play the music videos, and everybody would watch that, rather than the Iranian national TV. So that definitely also helped, and
I mean, you must have been shocked when you started figuring out that there's kids listening to this stuff in Tabriz or Shiraz or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So in the Khataman video you mentioned, you're wearing this oversized two-pack t-shirt.
Sure.
And I was watching it, and again, this question comes up of, okay, where the music comes from and who we are. And talk to me about walking the line between adopting sounds that you love and appropriating African-American music, for example. I know you must have thought about this. Where do you come down on that?
Sure. Well, to me, the way I felt, I think is the most important thing of how you feel when you're doing something. And to me, it was love. It was a love for Tupac, and it was love for hip hop music. We grew up on it, right? And at the same time, I was putting that music out through my filter. So I wasn't basically talking about what American rappers are talking about per se. Right. I was saying my story. I was talking about my story, but through that filter, and because I learned from it, right? I was inspired by it. And I don't really think of it as appropriation. Sometimes, and it's a big conversation that's been going on the past few years about some things, and I personally think some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't make sense, to me at least. Like, I don't know, hoop earrings or stuff like that. But yeah, to me, I felt like I'm just giving something back to my people through my filter. And there's definitely, if you translate the lyrics, it has nothing to do with Tupac lyrics and his story, or any other rapper. It's Erfan's story. It's what I saw. It's an Iranian immigrant story. You know what I mean? It's not a Tupac in the Hood story.
The other conversation that happens, and has been happening in recent years, and it's the same one that people have about punk rock too, but they certainly have it about hip hop, is to say that hip hop artists, this is not Iranian hip hop artists, but in general, have lost their way in terms of where it originally came from. Something that was the poetry of the street when it emerged in the late 70s and early 80s in New York has become this thing about sort of bling and whatever,
Sure.
And it really is more like pop in many cases now. Do you feel like Persian hip hop is about the street, or is it more the domain, I mean, with exceptions, of course, of middle class or upper middle class Persian kids? I mean, which is fair too. Have you reflected on that? Is there a class dimension to Persian hip hop that is different from where hip hop would have started in America?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something about that, but and a lot of people are try to put hip hop in a box as far as what it should be about. Hip hop should be about politics, should be about the streets, and then it shouldn't be about mainstream or partying with cars and stuff like that. I'm like, you know what? It's just a style of expression. To me, that's what it is. Even if you go back in the old school days, there was hip hop is they said there's hip hop, hip to the hip. There was that, and then there was Public Enemy, right? There was even different styles of hip hop from the very beginning. It wasn't everybody, but so this. On the same note, I think the Persian hip hop game, Iranian hip hop game, some people want to say that it should be about this or it should be about struggle. Right. I don't believe that. I think even though I don't support, the other stuff, and I don't like it, I don't listen to it. It's not, but I think everybody should have the right to express themselves however they want about whatever issue and subject they want. If you don't like it, don't listen to it. Some people think, oh, hip hop's dying, this is ruining the culture or something like that. No, there's both sides still exist. They're doing their thing. If someone's has interest
wait, somebody said that about Persian hip hop, that it's ruining the culture, or that it's a
yeah, that's still going on. A lot of people say the whole back in my day thing or back in the day thing that exists about everything. It exists about Persian hip hop too right now, and people say maybe the original rappers, which is man, I'm one of them, so what they say supports what I do, but still I think even the people that are doing it right now, and I think they're doing it wrong, for example, as far as it might not sound like the rap that I want to listen to, but they should have the right to do it. And I think it's fine with me.
It's so funny how quickly that can happen. Like it's only been 15 or 20 years, but I actually talked to a young hip hop guy here in Canada, a couple of days ago before this interview, and I was asking him about you, and he's like 21, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I love the old school Erfan Hitchcast, but what it's become," and I'm like, "Wow, how quickly did that happen?" It's like he's talking about you as if you're like 70 years old, and now there's a new school and stuff, But
what it is, Jian? I mean, a big part of it is that people want the whole world, and art included, to revolve around what they want and their taste, and that's a big problem with anything, right? So if someone, there's a lot of rappers that from old school to new school that they stick to one subject and they can only rap about one thing. Right. So now that could have two reasons. One could be that they're one-dimensional. They don't think about anything else really that they want to write about. The other thing is that maybe that song or the songs they did initially worked for them. So they're like, okay, I'm just going to stick to this lane. I'm just going to keep doing this thing over and over. And sometimes people like that. Like me, I talk about if I want to talk about love, I'll talk about love. I want to talk about my struggles. I want to talk about my being an immigrant. I want to talk about politics, whatever. Because I really do think about all these things, and they're all emotions to me. So why shouldn't I write about them, right? So what's that done to my career, my fans, are that I have a split fans between the different songs that I did. They're all big songs with a lot of followers, but some people like the Erfan that talks about depressing shit. Some people like it when I'm angry. Some people like my political songs. Some people like about, like, let's say, you can call it party songs, whatever. And they want to be Nazis about it and say that, no, you should do this one because I like it more. You know what I mean? It's kind of, so that's what's happening.
Let me continue on this musical journey of Erfan. By 2010, you put out your second major album, Hamishagi. I want to play a popular song. I don't know if you're sick of this song, but it's always been one of my favorites. So I want to play a bit of Dobare. Let's take a listen to this.
همه همسن مریض روحیم منم همسن پایین روحیم من نگفتم تو مسیر خوبیم نه مسوفیم نه سفیر رومیم از جون میگم تو این را جون میدم حالا دور بر ندا به رو میدم هر وری باد میاد به اون سو میرم هر جنونشون جوره از اون رو میگن بذار زور میگم تو کور بشن دستور بدم بذار بگم گوش ندم بکن تو گور من بچش خون من هیچ کسوفی نمیشه ضد نور من شور من شده پل عبور من روشن طول شب کل وجود من خرید نور من نه بابا کور پر وسط زوده هنو قبول ظهور من
That's Dobare from 2010, Erfan. So around this time, Erfan, you relocate to Dubai for 4 years? What was that about?
Well, I went to Dubai for the first time for a show at a concert, and then around the same time, there was this young artist that I started working with named Behzad Leto, who's pretty big in the Iranian rap game now. Sure. So Behzad was telling me he hadn't even released any songs. He was kind of like he listened to my music, he really liked me, and we're in touch on that note. And he's like, come here, Dubai's really cool. There's a lot of opportunities to do things. And I'm like, well, if you think there are opportunities, go find some people. And let's make a music video. Let's do some stuff. You know people there. You live there. You have the connections. So he went and he talked to some guy. We connect. I talked to that guy. When I got to Dubai, we had a couple of meetings, and he's like, let's make a studio together. You have the power. You have the artist. You have the fame. You know the music side. I'll be an investor. I'll do the business side, and I'll be the bank for it. I'm like, awesome. That sounds cool. I've always wanted to do something like that. So I ended up, after the show, I came back here a month and a half later. I packed my bags and put some stuff in storage and just moved to Dubai.
You did the Argentina thing.
Yeah,
you're like,
that's
okay.
What I mean. Exactly. I was like, whatever. Let's do that. It's something new. So I moved to Dubai. We started a label. We started a music studio. But after a while, things just weren't going as planned. And there were some clashes between me and that guy. And so the whole thing got put on pause. But I stayed in Dubai for another few years. So I lived there from 2000 to 2014, doing various different things. I worked at a TV channel. Then I got into real estate towards the end before moving back to Los Angeles. And I lived in Malaysia at some point in between. I moved to Malaysia for 3-4 months. I didn't like it. Um, it happened through my job, and I went there. I told my boss, you know what, I don't like it here. It's not my thing. So I moved back to Dubai, and anyway, here we are today.
So there's a couple of things I want to ask you about there. First of all, when you say I was doing some real estate and all that, I always find this shocking. You're one of the biggest hip hop artists in Iranian history. Your videos, even by 2010, around that time, are getting tons of views. You must have had, I guess, do we have streams in 2010? We didn't have something like Spotify, but you must have been selling a lot of records. So is that to say that you couldn't make this 100% your career yet at that point?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's not. I wasn't selling a lot of records. People download stuff, right? In Iran, when 95% of your fans, let's say 90% of your fans are in Iran,
right? And
you can't sell any songs there. You can't do any shows there. You can't partner with anybody for any businesses there. You can't do any merch there, selling merchandise. What do? How are you making your money, right? So I always did other jobs, like financial stuff, like I was in the mortgage industry, but at the same time in my 20s, the struggle was that when I focused on that and I made like decent money, then my music suffered, right? So then I would save up money for a while, and then I would get back into my emotional zone, tap into myself, make really good music, but then my making money side would suffer. You know, I couldn't do business. Like I couldn't mix them up together. It's something that I learned, and I'm better at it now in my 30s. Like I learned how to do that, but back then it was a struggle. And so, no, I wasn't making good money, and I wasn't doing good financially at all when I was in Dubai doing those things, and I had to have other jobs.
People who regularly listen to Roqe at this point might be tired already of me saying this, but I just find that really heartbreaking. Because it's the same story as Hamed Nikpeh or Ali Azimi, people we've had on the show who you've got this huge fan base, and you can't even get the support to continue doing the craft that's created the fan base because you can't get a direct access to them. I mean, it's heartbreaking, I find.
It is, and then not only that, but then your fans and the people break your heart too, by saying that, you know, the issue that I had compared to rappers living in Iran, a lot of people in Iran, because they haven't been on the outside, they haven't lived on the outside of Iran, they think once you leave, everything's beautiful. Money starts pouring in, you mansion, Mercedes, you know, all those things, and that's just not true for us who've lived here and we've struggled. That's just not the case. So for them, they always thought I have it easier as an Iranian rapper on the outside, or I must be really rich, or my father is rich and he's paying for my career. And when in reality, I was working my ass off, 80 hours a week, making money, and then I would spend my money to make a really good music video. And people, instead of saying, "Wow, you hustled, man, you did a good job," they're like, "Oh, well, you live there, it's easy." When in reality, the rappers who were in Iran and had a name, music was free they lived in their parents' house. They didn't have rent. Studios are free for people who are famous in Iran that they're rapping there. You know what I mean? And that wasn't the case for me. And that was always a very annoying thing that pissed me off. And, you know, it still goes on to this day. And another point that I want to make about this subject is, for some reason, that this doesn't happen you don't see under Jay-Z's, Instagram or Drake's Instagram, you have money, you're comfortable. You don't see, American fans saying that you're being rich or making money is not a bad thing here. People route for you. They're like, no, awesome, he did it, he killed it, he made
especially
it.
Especially in hip hop, it's seen as a validation. Yeah,
for sure. But with Iranian people, success, if you make money or something like that, they're just they want to put you down or talk shit about you or say oh, he has it easy, or not recognize the things that you've done for the music and for yourself and for your life, more importantly.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's just lack of knowledge. They just don't know, they just, and I also think as growing up in Iran, what is America about? You could be whoever you want. You could make it really big. Same thing in Japan, Japanese culture is really big as you focus, you dedicate yourself to your work in your life. You do this and do that, and you become successful. Then you give back to your country, to your people. But Iran, we're not taught that as children, and it's a struggle for me to get through to my fans and the youth sometimes, and I tell them dude, you could be anything you want. You could do this. I say the longest speech about you can be anything that you want if you focus on it, you dedicate your time to it, not be lazy. you can make things happen even in Iran. They're like, oh no, you don't live here.
Can they be anything they want? Is that really true? Can a kid growing up in Iran right now be Erfan if he wants to be?
To a certain extent, to a certain extent, depends. But I notice the differences, right? If you live in America, like you don't have any filter and you can do this and that, but it's not so black and white. Is my point. It's not that over there it's impossible, you can't do anything, but over here you can. There's multiple artists from my generation that didn't really have anything financial backing in Iran. They made it big in Iran. They moved out and they made a career and a life for themselves outside of Iran, right? If you want to do that. But my point's not even just about music, about other things in life. In Iran, I'm saying if Nelson Mandela lived in South Africa and from a village and he became Nelson Mandela, you should shut the fuck up and not complain all the time and just at least try, not just I'm not going to do anything because I have no way out. That's the thing. So maybe I should have, in short, this is what I want to say is like, the way to deal with your situation is not to say I don't have a way out and so I'm just not going to do anything about it. You should still struggle and have hope and, go after the things that you want and you'll make your life better, right? Do you agree with this part at least, that you could have a better life than what you have right now if you work hard?
I think that Nelson Mandela is a great example. But you've also said, Erfan, you said in a recent interview that Iranian youth, from your standpoint, don't believe in themselves these days. You said that with some sadness. What does that mean to you?
They just don't think anything will ever get better because especially the people, like, they've never... let's say you live in a country and since you were born, everything is just always getting worse, right? In the sense of it, like at least economically, things are always getting worse. Your money's losing value. Your relation with other countries are getting worse. And, so it's kind of easy to not have that much hope, and so that's why in the past few years, I've tried to kind of make that the message of some of my music, just positivity and you can do it. And I have gotten a response from that. I get messages from people like, oh, you told me to do what I believe in. I became a doctor. I became an engineer. I became an artist. I became, whatever it is that they're doing. And I love that. But at the same time, like seeing when I put something really positive out there and I see the no hope messages, there's nothing out there for me. It's heartbreaking.
How much of what you want to do, I mean, having been one of the pioneers, I don't know how much of an honor it is for you to be called the godfather of, or the pioneer of Persian hip hop, but you talk about that Dubai time and starting your own label, and I was actually going to bring up Behzad Leto because I know he suggests that you are one of his inspirations for getting into the genre. How much has your career become about wanting to foster an Iranian musical community at this point, wanting to build this thing for others?
Well, it's a big part of what I even dreamed of from before because in some sense, right, like I'm realistic about the fact that I'm not always going to be around and, any artist in any country, any language, they have ups and downs and they have the times that overall is considered their better records or like their golden time and golden age and stuff like that. So even aside, I just always wanted to kind of nurture other artists around me, and that's why I started Paidar. And I wanted to have other artists around. I feel like I'm capable of doing more than just make my own music. I'm capable of making music for other people, and at the same time support other musicians to kind of become their own versions of me, not me, but like their own versions. So that's why I made Paidar, and I made sure whatever artist, whoever joins, they have full artistic freedom as far as style. I don't say like, oh, if you don't rap about politics, you can't be in my label. You could make fun music, you could make sad music, whatever you want to do. Be you, but be the best that you are. And so that's why I started Paidar, and I started nurturing it throughout the years. There's been multiple artists that were members and still are that are working and have become successful. Behzad is one of them. Let's say Sogan was another artist, and like Ali Jidal. Now we have Iman. There's Taham. There's Paya, Sakesh.
On the note of, by the way, I think that's fantastic that you're creating that space and you've helped do that. In terms of that connection to the majority of that audience that happened to be not necessarily in the diaspora, but in Iran, I was reading in a book that you were described as an Iranian rapper in exile. Are you in exile? I mean, technically, or are you an Iranian American who cannot currently visit Iran? What is your status in terms of you and in Iran?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're in exile, you don't give you a choice, right? You don't have a choice. You have to leave. Um, but that didn't happen. When I left Iran, I didn't leave Iran because of music. It kind of happened after I left. I started doing music, and so it was by choice. I mean, it sucks. It's horrible that I can't go back. Why? And I realized what that means when I talk to like an American person. I'll tell them I can't go back to Iran because I rap. They're like, "What are you talking about? How's that even possible?" Right? And it's not the fact that I can't go back to Iran, but I can't leave Iran when I go back, and I'll get in trouble when I go there. So I don't think, I mean,
Rap
exile.
is rap and hip hop outlawed in Iran, or does it depend on the lyrics, or what is the technical issue with rap?
There's no, it's just not recognized. There's no law that says rap is illegal, for example. It's just not recognized, and like there's people who have tried to get they call it mujavez, but so they could do it legally, the permit to make music. No one's ever gotten it. They don't give it to you no matter what. Even if you just do love songs, even if you don't say anything political, anything about social issues, no one gets it. You can't rap legally. You can, yeah.
Wow.
Like let's say.
So if you wrote a rap song lauding, like celebrating the Iranian government, like a hip hop celebration of the regime, would that get aired, or? That's what I'm wondering, if it's by genre or by lyric. I'm so frustrated hearing stories about censorship that I know that it's impossible to deconstruct this in any sort of logical way sometimes, because it's just whimsical. But I'm very curious, what it actually means.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even there are rappers who they don't have the permit, they're not legally doing music, but they secretly get support. And they try to make them big. Let's say there's some guy named Hamid Safat, and his music, I mean, is like pretty much supportive of the situation and everything over there that happens, right? And sometimes they go on these trips to these like Karbala, and they go to like war zones and stuff like that to have that. They have like they keep that persona, right? That like supportive of like everything that's going on. And even they don't get the permit, but they do what they want. No one bugs them. They don't get arrested. There's even artists who leave the country and do concerts and go back, and they don't get in trouble somehow, right? But so it all depends on who you know, how well you're connected. But as far as just being legal and doing shows there, selling your music, it hasn't happened for anybody. And I mean, even outside of rap, let's say you're a singer, you're a pop singer, you're a classic singer, you have to take your lyrics. There's no laws about what you can and can't say. You have to put it in front of some guy who gave him that position, that he has the right. He reads your poetry or lyrics or whatever you want to call it. He says, okay, you can sing this song. The guy from Erfan, you can sing this song. It's okay. And then someone else goes and like they read their lyrics. Oh, you can't do this song. It might even be the same lyrics. Just depends how if the guy likes you or not. And there's no written rules, and that's the fucked up part. There's no like. There's nothing they could like go based on it. Be like, okay, if I do this, for sure, I'm going to get in.
So this brings up the notion of social commentary and political dialogue in some of your music. We started the interview playing a taste of Paidari from your latest album. It's a song that has some pointed commentary sprinkled into it. How important is it for you to be addressing issues around what is happening in Iran or what is happening with people of Iranian descent?
It's very important to me, even as long as it's been since I've been back. It's one of the things that emotionally really affects me. And sometimes I don't know why. Like sometimes I'm watching like a documentary about Iran. Some guys went to Iran to try Iranian food, right? And it shows a scene of just people walking in the streets of Iran, and I just burst out crying out of nowhere. I'm like, why am I crying about this? Like, why is this so emotional to me? But just like, and nothing sad is happening in the scene. It's just people walking in the streets. But it's just like, I feel like deeply connected with Iran and its people, and so it's really important to me that whatever that is on my mind, I'm going to talk about it, and I've done that. Even though I mentioned this to you before, there have been times that I'm like, okay, maybe I should chill out, maybe I should calm down with the political stuff, so I can go back to Iran. I miss it. I really want to be there. This is my prime. That's my country. I'm rapping for them. Why can't I go back there, right? But then something else goes down. I'm like, what? Fuck it. Like, I'm like not saying anything about this. And
so wait a second. You see something, you see a video or an image of the streets of Iran and people walking outside a cafe or something, and you start to cry?
Yeah. One of the rare things that makes me cry is that.
Tell me what's going on there. What do you think?
I think it's just emotional. I feel the connection with the people, especially when it's young people, or if I see like people in university, you know, when I'm like university students walking around or something like that. And it's happened like so often to me. And I think it's the whole part of, and I'm very open about talking about like these things. I'm not afraid to talk about something made me cry. I watched a movie I watched, it just kind of reminds me of the story of like what's happened to us as Iranians in the past few years. It hits me immediately, and it's a very emotional thing for me. Yeah.
Are you crying, do you think, because you're sad for them, or you're sad that you're not there, or just a general...
It's about the Iranian story. That's what makes me cry. Like, you know, I don't know if you've seen a movie called Persepolis by Marjana.
Of course. I think it's outstanding, yeah.
Based on her book. I want to make this clear. I'm not a person who goes to movies and cries. I've never cried in any movie before. I went to the movie theater.
Too late, man. We will forever see you as a guy crying in the theaters.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I went and saw Persepolis in the movie theaters years ago when it came out. That movie really had me fucked up because it was like maybe a generation or two before me, her story, but it was exactly my story and so many other people's story. And that movie was like, I think that the perfect Iranian diaspora movie, and talking about our situation and what happened in our country and us as immigrants and the reason for us migrating outside, you know. So imagine a satrapi.
Yeah.
So yeah, so these things, I mean, I think it's the Iranian story.
I've always said, if you want to understand the Iranian Revolution or the Iranian story of the last few decades, you don't need to go and read a textbook. You could just read the graphic novel Persepolis, and then Persepolis 2, and it's all there. It's outstanding what she did there.
Amazing.
I'm
glad you've seen it.
You did talk about chilling out and doing different kind of stuff that isn't so political or social issue oriented. So let me play a bit of a track that got a lot of attention and some streams a couple of years ago. Not some streams, a lot. This is what I might call an Erfan pop hit. So let's play a little taste of حال من خوبه.
حال من خوبه، مال مالی مال مشروبه، گاهی یاری گاهی بد خوبه، جای خالی جای وقت بوده. آره انگار قفل شدم سر جای قبل، یه قدم میرم جلو یه قدم عقب، یه هفته است میرم تا صبح یه سر از شب، یه سر میدم قول یه ذره عوض میشم، بعد دو قلوب سری قولو پس میدم، بعد دو تا پک سری و بعد میشم تا که بیان دو تا چخ سریعت و رد میشم، نمیشم درست مریضیام از ریشن. گفتم منو هول نده، این بحثای علکی با من قد بده، من عشق میخوام ولی با تو جنگ قدرته، فرصت خالی کردن عقدته. حال من خوبه، چرا ناراحتی؟ حال من خوبه، مگه دعوا کار من بوده؟ تو که هر چیز خوب داری مال من بوده. حال من خوبه، چرا ناراحتی؟ حال من خوبه، مگه دعوا.
حال من خوبه from Erfan.
حال من خوبه.
Try to get that out of your head now, everybody. It's an infectious song. But there you are in that video, lounging on a boat in the sunshine. There's a lady there. This is not the socially conscious Erfan now. This is the fun Erfan, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not even the fun thing. This song, like, it's a happy song. I'm thinking I feel good. But I'm glad you played this song, because every line of this song is a true story. It's a fact about a previous relationship that I had with somebody, and then what I went through and I came out of it. And I'm really proud of like the things that I say in that song, because it's so real. When I listen to it, I'm like, damn, like that's crazy how I put these things into words, because every single thing is like, this is one of my most like literal songs ever, because every single thing in that song actually happened. And it was kind of like therapy for me to write that stuff and like be like, I feel good now. That's behind me. And so why would I not say it or make this song? Because you want me to be angry Erfan all the time or political Erfan all the time. I'm not going to do that.
Right. But how conscious are you of your consciousness, I suppose? In other words, when you finish a song like this, Hala Men Khubed, you go, okay, now I got to talk about sanctions. This is too, I'm having too much fun. I mean, really, how much do you edit yourself in those situations?
I just feel like for me, it's the things it's about my surroundings, right? Like whatever is happening around me, I take it in. Sometimes when I write a song, it's something like it's a mixture of something that happened like last night, a story someone told me, something happened in the news, and something maybe happened 20 years ago, right? And I put it together, it makes me write a song. So it's never premeditated that, okay, I'm going to sit down and write a political song. There's always a reaction to something that's happened, whether it's political or social or love song or whatever it is. It's a reactionary thing.
I know I can't keep you forever. I just got a couple more questions. I want to ask you about your impressions of the diaspora. Because I think someone like you, my personal view is it's as valuable or more than than an academic or someone whose job it is to sort of teach us about the diaspora. Because you travel, you see people of Iranian descent around the world who come to you for you to explore them. You know, last year you did a tour in Russia. And when I heard about this, my first reaction was, how many Iranians are there to come to Erfan shows in Russia? But I know you had significant crowds there. So what can you tell us about those experiences?
Yeah, well, it was a decent sized crowd. It's definitely nothing like let's say Toronto or like Istanbul when there's millions, but not millions of crowd for me, but millions of Iranians living there. But it's a different experience. Sometimes when it's like a full student crowd who have came somewhere recently from Iran, it's just more emotional, right? Let's say I go to Istanbul, we have a packed show, some real fans come from Iran, they fly all the way from Iran and come, stuff like that. But at the same time, some people are there because, let's say, just like when you go to a Drake show here or a Jay-Z show or whoever's concert, some people are like, oh, let's go to the Drake show tonight. But they're not like hardcore fans, right? Or with any other concert.
Right.
So, but when I go do a show in Budapest or in Moscow, they're all hardcore fans and they're students and the people who like know every word to every song. And it's just like, it's a beautiful feeling. And I feel like that's when those are the shows that I feel the most connected with Iran, because that's what they are. They just came 2 weeks ago, last month, 6 months ago, and they're going to go back in 2 years. Right. So it's just, it's very emotional.
But can I just point out how interesting this is? You, obviously you're Iranian and you grew up half the time there, et cetera, but you're a guy living in California. They are in Moscow, coming recently from Iran, and they savor coming to your show because it reminds them of home.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of artists don't go there because it's a smaller crowd, or this. I should change the verbiage on that. There's barely any shows in Moscow, right? So when you go there and you do something like that for them, it makes them very happy, and it makes me very happy. And it's just crazy how the world is that, Iranian, like you said, living in California, Iranians living in Moscow, both away from the country, we get together somewhere and we connect like that, and it's beautiful.
Do you feel on some level like you have to, you are effectively in some ways an ambassador for Iranians in these situations? Do you feel any weight of responsibility on that? Like you're some kind of surrogate for all of us? Like if you do something wrong or you piss off the Moscow security or something like that, it's a reflection of Iranians because you've been the pioneer in this genre, because you're Erfan, because there's people coming to see you?
Brother, I feel that way even outside of the music. And let's say, in Los Angeles, I go to the office that, I do real estate and whatever it is that I do. Anything that I do, because I'm an immigrant and I have that thing in my own subconscious mind constantly that I'm an Iranian, I'm a representative of Iran, and what they think of us and what they see about us in the news. So it's like I'm always on my toes and like very focused on making sure that, I'm a good representative, and like it's just something that's with you even when it's outside of music and outside of anything else like that people look up to me for,
You're an interesting guy. Before I let you go, you've done a lot in terms of helping to shape this genre. Besazi, you've done this thing, but you're still a pretty young guy. Where do you feel like you're at on the Erfan journey?
Yeah, well, I feel like there's a lot of things that I've been working on in the past couple of years that maybe they're somehow related to my music, but not necessarily directly. And they're also part of my journey, because I'm not, again, my interest, music doesn't define all my interests. There's a lot of things that I'm really deeply interested in and passionate about outside of music. Music is number one, but it's like photography, cooking. I like making clothes, not with my hands, but the fact that like I just like that industry. I think it's cool to like, you know, do that. And just bringing all these things together is what I've worked on the past couple of years, and now it's happening. And I feel like what do you call it? I feel like in your 30s, there's a lot of confusion in your 20s. I don't have that anymore. I know exactly what I want. I know what kind of music I want to make. I don't care what anybody thinks about the music that I make and anything else that I do. So I think it's I have a long way ahead of me, but this is like the easiest it's ever been to focus and kind of like know what path I want to go move forward on.
You can't tell me that you can't tell me that you're into cooking without me asking what the best Erfan dish is then.
I don't know. I like making everything, man. But I like grilling a lot. You know, I do a lot of that, and yeah, man. I just like grilling is probably my like specialty of not just making the meat, but like, you know, marinating it, keeping it, and I like making باقالی پلو ماهیشه. I love that.
All right, okay, that's not easy. I was thinking, okay, his version of cooking is he throws a steak on the barbecue. So bagali polo is a little. That's a different story.
As soon as I said the grilling, I'm like, you think I'm just like a dad making hot dogs?
That's right. That's right. You put your flip flops on. You threw a steak on the Barbie, and now you're calling yourself a cook. Yeah.
No. I do everything. Yeah.
So we want to go out on a song that also came out relatively recently called Yechi Beynishe. And what can you tell us about this song?
I love this song. This song, like, the reason I was talking to my best friend Yaya, who's like, he's been my best friend for probably like 17 years now. And he's a therapist, very deep guy, very spiritual guy. And we're just talking about the principle of duality in things. And things not being so black and white with everything, and how there doesn't have to be absolute truth about anything. If you make money, then you can't be spiritual, or you have to let go of anything like that you like to become like a Buddhist in a temple, or you can't, you know what I mean? Like, so we're just thinking about different things that like, no, there's grays in between. You can do both to a certain extent, and pay attention to the surroundings of who you are, where we are in this world, and, you know, still be true to yourself and the things that you love, and you have to act a certain way. And a lot of it even became from like just on social media today. A lot of times people, like, if they're spiritual and the conscious, they want to seem conscious, then they have to dress like you don't have to dress like a hippie Indian to be conscious, right? You don't have to, you know, and just kind of talked about duality, and the second thing that I talked about, and I just came together and I wrote this song that afternoon.
It's been a real pleasure, man. I've learned from you. I've laughed with you. This has been really enjoyable and educational, and I so appreciate you taking all this time.
Same here, brother. Really nice talking to you, and we'll be in touch.
Mizun
Thanks
Bashin.
for everybody for tuning in.
Khodafis. Thanks, brother. Bye-bye.
Khodafis. Take good care, bro.
That's Erfan Paydar, an Iranian rapper, recording artist, songwriter, producer, label owner. He joined us from Los Angeles, California today from 2019. This is his song, Yechi Beynishe. And this is Full Time for Roqe. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for supporting. Thanks to our amazing team, Mizun Bashin. This time to everyone.
سفید و سیانی یه چی بینشه آره راستی و ریانی یه چی بینشه نه خوبه نه بده نه روزه نه شبه نمونده نه رده آره همون یه چی بینشه گرم و سرد نیست و یه چی بینشه آره جزر و مد نیست و یه چی بینشه نه شله نه شره نه قله نه دره نه گرگه نه بره آره همون یه چی بینشه میگم پولو بده بره سودو بده بره مادیاتو همه دود کن بده بره یا که روحو بده بره قلب خوبو بده بره از انسانیات هرچی تهش موندو بده بره میگم ترسو بده بره شکو بده بره گذاشتم بر خودت حدو بده بره حد وسط هم داریم هم پولو میخوام هم روحو توی هر روتاشو میکنم من کم رو تو. سفید و سیانی یه چی بینشه، راستی و ریانی یه چی بینشه. نه خوبه نه بده، نه روزه نه شبه، نمونده نه رده، آره همون یه چی بینشه. گرم و سرد نیست و یه چی بینشه، جزر و مد نیست و یه چی بینشه. نه شله نه شره، نه قله نه دره، نه گرگه نه بره، آره همون یه چی بینشه.
یه چی بینشه، یه چی بینشه. به حرفان گوش نده ببین دل بده. من میخواستم حرفان برسونه شهر، وقتی رسیدم بهت بگی زلزله. میخوای جلو نرم نکنه برسم به تو. من تو کی؟ من میخوام برسم به خودم رو گم کردم لای گل گرگا. وقتی به خودم اومدم گرگا مثل بره شدم. برد و باخت ترد دروغه میدونم، آخر هر طول و فروغه میدونم. ببینم و من شاملو نیستم ولی کلی ناگفته تو سکوته میدونم. خوبی یا همیشه تو روته میدونم، قدرت اصلیم تو روحه میدونم. هر کی سودم و تماشا میکنه فقط منتظر سقوطه میدونم.
سفید و سیانی یه چی بینشه، راستی و ریانی یه چی بینشه. نه خوبه نه بده، نه روزه نه شبه، نمونده نه رده، آره همون یه چی بینشه. گرم و سرد نیست و یه چی بینشه، جزر و مد نیست و یه چی بینشه. نه شله نه شره، نه قله نه دره، نه گرگه نه بره، آره همون یه چی بینشه. خیلی هدفمون فقط یه پلن، میرسی میبینی پله بعدی و بعضی را پله ها تمامی ندارن، تازه میرسی قله میبینی قله بعدی و چاه میکنی به آب نمیرسی. هرچی میری بازم سیر نمیشی، بازم پایین تر هر بار که میرسی، بازم به سراب توی افق خیره میشی. اینا مسیرهایین که مقصد ندارن، باید ببینی که مقصد کجاست. اگه یکم توی خودت بگردی میبینی که فقط مقصد خداست. نه اون خدا که اون بالا نشسته اینجا، خدا یعنی همین زمینی که توشی اینجا. نه اونی که دستت بالاست به سمتش، خدا عشق همه وصلین بفهم همه از یه روحین.
سفید و سیانی یه چی بینشه، راستی و ریانی یه چی بینشه. نه خوبه نه بده، نه روزه نه شبه، نمونده نه رده، آره همون یه چی بینشه. گرم و سرد نیست و یه چی بینشه، جزر و مد نیست و یه چی بینشه. نه شله نه شره، نه قله نه دره، نه گرگه نه بره، آره همون یه چی بینشه.